Hello guys, welcome back. In the previous part we have learned about the API resources, and in this part we'll learn about the request, about the client-side and server-side considerations whenever we are sending or receiving a request. We'll learn about the route resources, name route and route groups in specific. We'll learn about the authenticated routes and also how to override the auto redirect feature whenever an authentication is failing and how to pass a specific message. And also we'll learn about the dependency injection or auto inject feature. So in the next video also we'll learn about the request validation and also custom requests. So first of all, what are client-side and server-side considerations whenever we are sending or receiving a request? So the client-side considerations are, first of all, we need to use the correct URL, otherwise we'll get the error which says not found. Also, we need to consider a specific method or the correct method, which are get, post, put, or delete. And also, we should send the data as requested by the endpoint. And this is called the validation, because sometimes some endpoints requires us to send some specific data to it, and otherwise it will fail. And at the last, we need to consider the authentications, because some routes are authenticated and also not publicly available to everyone. So the server-side considerations are, first of all, we need to use the default HTTP request or a custom request. Also, we need to validate the inputs that's coming from the user. Otherwise, the user will send any kind of data, and this will occupy a lot of resources on the server side. And also, we need to send specific error messages. So this was all the theory. Let's start by what are the requests. Whenever we are accessing an endpoint, suppose in case of our previous session, API opportunities that we accessed, and also we use the API resources to just transform our response. And when we send this request to the server with this specific URL and also this specific method, we are getting a response from the server. And if this URL is not correct, suppose I am deleting some letters and sending this data, basically we are getting this not found exception. Why? Because this method is not existed. And also if you check here, we have the opportunities, and also we have these routes: register, login, log out, and user. And how we can get to know what kind of routes or endpoints we have, here is a command in Laravel that you can use. Basically it is php artisan route list, and here it will list all the routes that you have. It's not looking good, and suppose if I use the terminal here, so I'm going to navigate cd to desktop, and we have the forsat backend, and I'm going to clear it. And suppose if I write php artisan route list, and if I maximize this, you can see we have all these routes which are available to us. And these routes, basically at this part, we have all the routes related to the passport, and we have some custom routes like login, log out, register, and also we have the opportunities, but we don't have this route, opportunity, something like that. We don't have this route. That's why we are getting this not found exception. Basically, this route is not existed in our route list, so our server doesn't know about it. But suppose if I change it back to opportunities, we are getting the exact thing. Sorry, the server is not running, so let me run the server by running php artisan serve and sending back the request. So we are getting this response. But in case, suppose this URL is correct, but the method is not correct. Suppose we have the get method, but we are sending a post method, we are getting this error, method not allowed exception, because here we have the get method and sending the post method. But if I change it, we get the exact data. So these are all about the request. And also we need to have this considerations So in our mind, suppose in case of the client side and also in case of the server side, we'll use all these features, but right now we need to cover the rest. So we'll go with the route resources. And what are the route resources? I'll try to demonstrate it with an example. Suppose in case of the opportunity, if I suppose have another route, and this is called the opportunity, and this will call the same controller, which is the opportunity controller, but with different method, and this method is the show method, which is exactly there inside our controller. Suppose if I save it, and if I go back here, we have this show method, which accepts an opportunity, and later on I'll explain what this is. And right now we have this, and if I just go here and just write this PHP artisan route list, you can see that we have something else here, which is API opportunity, and this is a get method. So we are getting this route also in our route list, but previously it wasn't there. You can see here we have the opportunities but not the opportunity. And right now if I send the request to the opportunity, so suppose to the opportunity, and if I just hit the send button, you can see we get the response, but this response is an empty response. Why? Because here inside our show method we are not sending anything back. So suppose if I returning something like testing data, and if I save it and send this request back, we are getting this testing data. But this is not how we use it. What we want is we need to show an opportunity. How we can use this one, it is really easy. So first of all, let me return this opportunity. And here inside our opportunity, what I need to do is we need to call the opportunity. The same thing, the exact thing that we have here. So the name is opportunity, and also we need to call this one as opportunity. And right now if I send this one, we are getting an error. Why? Because this is not found. And if I go back to our route list, and right now if I refresh it, we can see that we have the API opportunity, and it accepts or needs an opportunity that we need to send, or the ID of an opportunity that we need to send it. Otherwise, the other route is not existed. That's why we are getting this not found. And suppose if I write 1 and send, we are getting the opportunity with ID 1. And if I just make it as 4T and send it, we are getting the opportunity with ID 4T. But if I come here inside our routes and API.php and just change this one to ID and send back this one, we are not getting anything. Why? Because previously I told you we need to have the exact name as it is here. And suppose I am changing this one to something which is nearly to it, opportunity or something, and if I send it, we are not getting anything. Why? Because it should be exact, and that's why it's called auto inject. So this is called the dependency injection or auto inject feature in the routes. And so this was all about it. But see here, for the opportunities, we need to call this opportunity controller each time, and for getting the opportunities, for get one opportunity, or for deleting or for updating an opportunity. What we can do is, here we have something called route resource. And for the route resource, first of all, we need to send something like opportunity, and also we need to send the controller, but without any method. This doesn't need any method. And right now, if I just save it and let me comment out these 2 lines, and if I go back to my terminal, let me clear it here, and if I just write PHP artisan route list, and here we can see we have everything. We have the opportunity, we have the create, we have the opportunity to get one opportunity, we have the put to update an opportunity. You can see we have everything, and from where this we can see from where these are coming, and these are coming from this route resource. this route resource. So basically route resource will create all these these routes for us. So these routes, and also they are named, and if you see here we have the opportunity which is the post method, and this is called opportunity.store, and also we have the name as opportunity.index. So this is how we can use the resource to create all this what you can say, this route for us. And right now if I just access this point, it just exists. Why? Because we have it from our resources. We have it from our resources here. If you see, we have this delete, and also we have this get method here. Sorry, this one. We have the get, which is opportunity.show. So this was all about the resources that you can use. The same thing you can use for your category. Suppose if I write route resource and I name it as category, and this is going to call the category controller, and that's it. And right now if I refresh my route list, you can see here we have the category, all the methods or all the routes related to the category. And if I call the category by category, I don't think I have it, so let me use this one and use the category. And if I send it, we are getting nothing. Why? Because inside our categories controller, inside the HTTP controllers and category controller, we are not sending anything inside the index method. And also if you look at here at the index one or at the category API category, here we are calling what method? App HTTP controllers category controller at index method, and that's why we don't have anything inside the index method. So if I return anything like testing data, so don't worry about the spelling, and if I send it here, we are getting this data. And if I just return new collection that we used in the previous one, new collection, it should be category collection, which is not existed, so I am going to create it. I'm going to stop the server. So we learned about this one, PHP artisan make resource, and I'll call it it should be inside the lookups folder. We'll call it as category collection because we have the category resource. And sorry, it's something I missed, I think. PHP artisan make, it should be make, not mecha. And right now we have this one, and if I use it, a new category collection, and pass the category which is inside our app models lookup category, and I'll pass all because we don't have that much categories. And if I run the server again and call to this endpoint, we are getting all the categories that we have. And the same thing we can use for the show one category. Suppose if I write category 1, we are not getting anything. Why? Because inside our show method here we don't have anything. So if I return this category, and that's it, and if I send this one, we are getting the exact category with a specific ID. So this is how we can use the auto inject property in Laravel, and it uses the dependency injection, and automatically it injects the category and sending to us. And also we can see we can use the route resources to have all these things. Okay, so the next thing that we have is here inside is which is the name routes. So if you see here, if you remember here in the name routes, we have something called category.store. Basically this is a name that we can use. And how we can name a route, it is really easy. Basically what we can do is if you create a route, suppose I have a test route, I'll call it as get, and so this is a test route, and I'll put it inside the category controller. So let me copy this one, I'll put it there for the testing purpose, and I'll call it as test. The method is test. And right now, if I go back to the category controller and create this one, I'll create it here, public function test. And right now, if I return something, suppose test route, and if I save it and if I access this one, suppose it is API dash test, so we are getting this test route, and from where I know it is the API-test, because if I refresh this route list, here you can see we have another route. If I find that it's here, we have the API test. But here, look at here inside the name, this doesn't have a name. And specifically it said it's inside the category controllers and method test. So how we can name it, or how we can name our route like the others, like the categories and also like the opportunities? It is really easy. So inside the API, what you can do is just add the name here, name, and I'll call it as test. And right now, if I save it and if I refresh this list, so if I refresh it, you can see we have the name as test, and we can just use it. Suppose we can use this one as route, and route suppose test, and if we do like that, we are getting the exact things. That's why we are using the name. Suppose here, see the name, so we are using this feature in the future. Okay, so we have all this about the name routes, and let's go for the other one, which is the route group. So for the route group, what we can do, let me delete this one because I added for the testing purpose, and also let me just delete this one. So for the route group, what we can do is we can group our routes. Suppose we can do one thing, route, and then group. This will accept an array. So first of all, we can prefix it, or prefix it. I'll prefix it as lookups. And what I'm going to do is, after doing that, we need to pass this closure function, which is basically a closure. And then I'm going to put a semicolon here. And after that, if I put this controller here inside this one, basically we grouped our routes. And if I right now just refresh my route list, you can see we have the categories, but right now we have this added prefix, lookups category, lookups category. Basically we what we did is we grouped our routes and this route. And suppose if I put something else, like what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the country here, and also I'm going to just use the country controller, because this category and country, these are the lookups for our application. And if I right now refresh this route list here, you can see we have the countries also, but it's all prefixed with what? With the lookups, and all it is prefixed. And then what we can do, we can put something else. We can put something like the middleware here. So middleware, and for this we are going to use the middleware as auth-API, which just authenticate our routes. So this is basically the next one, the authenticated routes that I mentioned earlier. Let me minimize this one, and right now if I refresh this one, this list, there is nothing added to this one. But at the end, you can see inside the middlewares, it uses the auth API. But if right now, if I just remove this part, just remove it, and if I refresh this list, you can see that auth API is not anymore exist with these lookups. But if I just put it back here and refresh that route, you can see we can have that this one, the auth API. So this middleware. So basically our auths are all authenticated. So this is how we can group our routes. And basically we grouped this route, and also after grouping, we said we want the what? We want the middleware to be auth API. But right now, if I try to access this category, I get some error. So suppose in case not found and API lookups. Yeah, it should be lookups and then category, because as I mentioned here, here we have something like this one, lookups category. It's not category anymore because what we did, we grouped it and also we added the lookups prefix to it. If you remember from here, we added this prefix lookups here. So all these routes inside this group will be prefixed with this lookup, and also we'll use this auth API. And basically this is a middleware to authenticate our routes. And right now, if I access this route, you can see we are redirected to the login, which is not defined because we don't have a login route. Basically what it does is we'll try to redirect you. It means that you are not authenticated and you need to authenticate first before accessing this endpoint or this route. But whenever we are accessing our endpoint or API, we do not want to get redirected. I mean, we want some specific function like not authenticated or something, but we don't want to just get redirected, because whenever we are accessing this one from our mobile application, and if we are getting redirected, means nothing to us, but not a specific message to us, means like what? Nothing. So what we want is to at least to have some kind of status with a specific message. So how we can do that? It is basically our next topic, which is override auto redirect feature. And how we can override this one? Basically, it is inside the middlewares, and we have something called authenticate.php. And if you see here, we have something called redirect to, and clearly it says get the path the user should be redirected when they are not authenticated. Means, so whenever we are trying to access to an endpoint, and that endpoint is endpoint needs authentication and we are not authenticated, we are getting redirected. And just remember that this needs the path. This function, this redirect function, needs a path to redirect to. And if I suppose put something like response, return response, sorry, not path, response, and inside the response I just pass unauthenticated, this will not work. Authenticated, and with a specific message like I pass 401, not authenticated. And right now, if I try to access, we're getting another error which says header may not contain more than a single header, because this is not clearly visible to what we can say to the user. What does it mean? We are getting this error, which is something even at the first time I didn't know it. So what does it mean? Means inside this we are getting another error. Basically this needs a path to redirect to, and we are just passing a response. So how we can just get rid of this error? What we can do is we need to create another route. Let me just comment this one for now, and I'm going back to my what you can say to my api.php, and at the end what I'm going to do is I am going to just create another route, and I am going to name it as auth field, and this is inside the auth controller, and we call the auth field or failed, sorry, auth failed, and we'll call it as and this middleware doesn't need any middleware, and we just going to name it. So this is the naming that I told you before. So I'll call it as auth field or field, auth field. Okay, auth failed. And then what we can do is we can use this one, auth failed, inside the authenticate. So what we can do right now here is to return a route, and this route, the name is authentication failed or auth failed. So let me put something here, authentication failed. Okay, so because it is more meaningful, I think authentication. Okay, so right now if I just try to access to this category, we are getting nothing because the auth failed method does not exist. So we need to go inside the auth controller and create this method. So I am going back to the controllers and auth controller. I am going to create something called public function auth failed, and here what we want is we want to return a response, and this response will have a message, so we can use unauthenticated and with the specific status code, which is 401. And right now if I try to access, we are getting this a specific message, a nice message that specifically it says here 401 unauthorized, and also we are getting something called unauthenticated, and also we can put something else like unauthenticated. Make sure the authorization is correct, something. And if I refresh it right now, you can see we are getting this nice message. So I'm just going to put this unauthenticated because we don't want this message a lot. So right now you might say, so how we can access these routes? So how we can access this routes from our client, from the mobile application or from the front-end application? It is really easy. What you need to do is inside the headers, or what you need is to put the authorization and the authorization key here and put something like bearer and put your token here. So right now we don't have a token. So how we can get a token? We need to just access our localhost 8000 and auth login, and after accessing this one we covered this one, so we are getting this token. And right now if I attach this token with this bearer, so and send this request, you can see we are getting all the categories. Basically what we are doing is we are authorizing our routes. And suppose I am deleting some part of this token and trying to send the request, we are getting still the unauthenticated with the unauthorized status code. And if I undo it, so I'm getting back this part. So this is all about the topics that we covered. So basically what we did, we used the route resources, name route groups, and also authenticated routes, override the auto redirect feature and passes message, and also we learned about the dependency injection. So in the next video we'll learn about the request validation and also creating a custom request. So thank you for watching. Just please subscribe and hit the bell button so you'll be notified about the next videos.